November 3rd, 1944. A desolate beach on the coast of Honshu, Japan. The pre-dawn air is cold, biting at the exposed faces of the soldiers from the Imperial Army's Special Balloon Regiment. They aren't handling steel or iron. They are struggling in the dark with a massive, rustling giant. It is 68 feet high, and it is made of paper. The wind whips the vast envelope as the sharp hiss of hydrogen fills the air. This is Operation Fugo, and it is Japan's desperate, secret revenge. 2 years earlier, Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy Doolittle's B-25 seconds had shattered the sacred myth of their homeland's invincibility. The psychological wound was profound. Japan needed a way to strike back at the American mainland, a target 5,000 miles across the Pacific. Their bombers couldn't make the journey. Their navy was being systematically destroyed. The solution came not from an admiral, but from an engineer, Major General Tsuyoshi Kusaba. His team had harnessed a force of nature, a high-altitude river of wind that Americans would later call the jet stream. Kusaba knew it as a river of air, moving at over 150 miles per hour, flowing directly from Japan to the Pacific Northwest. Kusaba's weapon was an intercontinental ballistic missile, built by hand from ancient materials. The balloon itself was a marvel of desperate ingenuity, 33 feet in diameter, constructed from 600 panels of washi paper, a laminate made from mulberry bushes, stronger than steel for its weight. The panels were glued together with konnyaku, a sticky, edible paste ground from a common potato-like plant. It was the craft of lantern makers, turned into a weapon of war. The payload was attached to a complex gondola. This wasn't a simple, free-floating balloon. It was a robot. A sophisticated aneroid barometer system controlled its altitude. If the balloon dipped below 30,000 feet, the barometer would trigger a small charge, dropping one of 32 sandbags, lightening the load, and forcing the balloon back up into the fast-moving current. After 3 days, when all the sandbags were gone, the final ballast was released. But this last drop wasn't sand. It was a 33-pound high-explosive anti-personnel bomb and 4 11-pound incendiary devices. The mission was not to topple buildings. It was to start a firestorm, to set the vast, timber-rich forests of Oregon and Washington ablaze, divert millions of American dollars and manpower to firefighting, and above all, to sow terror. At 5 a.m., the first balloon is released. The soldiers watch as the pale giant rises silently, catches the current, and vanishes into the high-altitude darkness. The silent invasion of America has begun. December 1944, near Kalispell, Montana. A local forest ranger, his breath clouding in the sub-zero air, stares at a massive tear in the snowpack. In the center of the crater lies a tangle of paper, rope, and strange, twisted metal. He's never seen anything like it. Days later, A.U.S. Navy P-38 Lightning pilot on patrol over the Pacific spots, a pale sphere hanging impossibly high in the sky, drifting east. He reports it, but the sighting is dismissed as a weather balloon. But the reports keep coming. From Wyoming, from Alaska, from Washington State. At first, the fragments are simply filed as unidentified objects. But as more are found, a chilling pattern emerges. The fragments are clearly of Japanese origin, marked with kanji. More disturbing, some are found with unexploded ordnance. By early 1945, the 4th Air Force and the Western Defense Command realize they are facing a full-scale, silent attack. The military's first reaction is dread, not of the bombs themselves, which are small, but of what they might carry. In a top-secret memo, strategists raise the horrifying possibility of biological warfare. Could these balloons be carrying anthrax? Or bubonic plague? Or cattle-killing diseases designed to wipe out the American food supply? But the immediate, tangible threat is fire. The balloons are arriving during the wet, snowy winter of the Pacific Northwest. The incendiaries are fizzling out in the snow. But the military looks at the calendar with growing alarm. What happens in June? What happens when the dry season begins, and these bombs land in the vast, tinder-dry forests of Oregon and Washington? The fear is that Japan, blind and deaf, is just range-finding. Soon, they might launch a massive wave timed for the summer, creating a continental-scale inferno. On the 4th of January 1945, the Office of Censorship in Washington, D.C. makes a critical decision. Director Byron Price issues a stark memo to every newspaper editor and radio broadcaster in the nation. Under the Voluntary Censorship Code, all mentions of fire balloons or bomb-carrying balloons are strictly forbidden. The blackout is absolute. The logic is simple. If the Japanese never hear a news report about a balloon landing, they will have no idea if their weapon is working. They won't know if the balloons are reaching the continent, if they are landing on target, or if they are crashing harmlessly into the ocean. The U.S. government decides to fight this invasion with total, suffocating silence. And so, as spring approaches, the American public goes about its business, buying war bonds and reading about the battles on Iwo Jima and Okinawa. They have no idea that, 30,000 feet above their heads, an enemy armada of 9,000 silent paper robots is drifting over their homes, farms, and forests, waiting for the weather to turn. May 5th, 1945, near Bly, Oregon. The air smells of pine and damp earth. 26-year-old Elise Mitchell, pregnant with her first child, steps out of the car. Her husband, Pastor Archie Mitchell, is parking it for their church picnic. It's a beautiful Saturday morning, and Elise is here with 5 children from their Sunday school class: Sherman Shoemaker, Edward Engen, Jay Gifford, and Dick and Joan Patska, ranging in age from 11 to 13. While Archie unloads the lunch baskets, Elisa and the children decide to explore. They follow a Forest Service road, laughing as they walk, their voices echoing in the quiet of the Gerhardt Mountain wilderness. After a few minutes, one of the children shouts, "They've found something." Half hidden in the duff and pine needles, snagged on a tall fir, is a large, pale object. It looks like a collapsed weather balloon, with strange metal parts hanging below it. It's unlike anything they've ever seen. Curious, the children gather around. Elise, standing nearby, calls out to them. Archie Mitchell, back at the car, hears her shout. It's a strange, garbled warning. "Look out! Don't touch that!" Then, the forest erupts. A single, violent explosion flashes through the trees, a concussive boom that echoes off the mountainside. The blast throws Archie to the ground. Debris, smoke, and a horrifying rain of earth and pine needles fall from the sky. He scrambles to his feet, his heart pounding, and runs toward the sound, shouting his wife's name. He finds a scene of impossible carnage. The bomb, likely jostled by one of the children, had detonated with lethal force. The 33-pound anti-personnel shell, designed to kill soldiers, had done its job with horrific efficiency. Elise Mitchell and all 5 children are dead. The news hits the small, isolated community of Bly like a thunderclap. The local sheriff and the military authorities from the nearby Klamath Falls base descend on the site immediately. The fragments, paper, fuses, and shrapnel confirm their worst fears. It is a fugo. The government's wall of silence has just been breached. The military cannot classify this. They cannot hide 6 deaths in a tiny, close-knit town. The story, despite desperate attempts at suppression, begins to leak. Local papers are demanding answers. The deaths of a pregnant woman and 5 children on American soil from enemy action is too big to contain. The censorship is lifted. On May 31st, 1945, the government finally issues a public warning. The news flashes across the Associated Press wire and hits every major newspaper. Americans, who believed the war was something fought over there in Europe and the Pacific, are shocked to their core. The enemy was here. The war had crossed the ocean, and for one family in Oregon, it had brought the ultimate, devastating price. June 1945. The Western Defense Command, the Presidio, San Francisco. The news of the Bly tragedy uncorks a bottle of controlled panic. Now that the public knows, the military is in a desperate race against the weather. The snows have melted. The vast forests of the Pacific Northwest are drying out, turning into the exact tinderbox that General Kusaba had dreamed of. The U.S. Forest Service warns that the 1945 fire season is predicted to be one of the worst on record, and the balloons are still coming. An unprecedented military operation kicks into gear. It is codenamed Project Firefly. The Army's 4th Air Force scrambles P-38 Lightning and P-61 Black Widow night fighters to patrol the skies from the Canadian border down to California. But the pilots are hunting a phantom. The balloons are small, non-metallic, and fly at an altitude where they are almost invisible, a pale dot in the glare of the sun, or a ghost at night. The real defense falls to the ground. The Army activates one of its most elite and most segregated units, the 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion, the Triple Nickels. They are the nation's first all-black parachute unit. Trained for combat in Europe, they were instead diverted to the homeland. Their new mission: to become the world's first smoke jumpers. These paratroopers are stationed across Oregon and Washington, waiting. When a balloon is spotted or a strange fire is reported, they fly over the remote wilderness in C-47 seconds and jump directly into the blaze, armed with shovels, axes, and explosives. Between May and October 1945, the 555th will jump on 36 missions, successfully containing the small fires started by the Fugo. Simultaneously, the Japanese High Command is completely blind. Back in Honshu, the launch crews have sent over 9,000 balloons into the jet stream, but the absolute American press blackout has worked too well. From their perspective, their weapons have simply vanished into a void. They have no reconnaissance planes, no spies who can report back. The only proof of success they have is a single vague report from a propaganda station in China that mentions great forest fires in America, a report that was likely fiction. The WWII tragedy, while a shock in America, is a non-event in Japan. It's not the massive, terror-inducing firestorm they were promised. By April 1945, with their hydrogen plants being pounded by B-29 seconds and their washi paper supply dwindling, the Imperial Army concludes the operation is a failure. They shut it down. As the summer of 1945 wears on, the threat that had terrified the U.S. government simply fades. The feared inferno never comes. The silent armada that crossed an ocean, a masterpiece of desperate ingenuity, is ultimately defeated by a snowy winter, ineffective incendiaries, and a wall of total silence. The last Fugo is launched weeks before the WWII tragedy, and the last one lands months later. The war in the Pacific is thundering to its violent, nuclear conclusion, and the strange, secret balloon war is already a forgotten footnote. Summer 1945, Pendleton Air Base, Oregon. For the soldiers of the 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion, this is not the war they trained for. They are elite paratroopers, primed to fight Nazi stormtroopers in the forests of Europe. Instead, they are being deployed against an enemy of pine, fir, and high explosives. Their mission is twofold: suppress the fires and, more importantly, secure the unexploded ordnance. This makes them the only unit in the war fighting fires and serving as an active bomb disposal squad simultaneously. A typical mission starts with a spotter plane sighting a wisp of smoke in the impenetrable wilderness of the Cascade Mountains. A C-47 transport, loaded with men from the 555th, flies over the site. The smoke jumpers, loaded with 80 pounds of firefighting gear, axes, shovels, explosives, and rations, leap from the plane into the towering trees. Their job is terrifying. They must navigate a rough parachute landing, often getting snagged high in the canopy, forcing them to rope down. Once on the ground, they race against the clock to dig a firebreak. All the while, they are acutely aware that somewhere in that smoke-filled clearing is a 33-pound high-explosive anti-personnel bomb or a cluster of incendiaries that failed to detonate on impact. They are fighting a two-front war, one against the blaze, the other against the booby trap at its center. Between May and October 1945, the Triple Nickels will jump on 36 missions and respond to over 28 balloon-related incidents. They perform flawlessly. They save vast tracts of timber and prevent the feared conflagration. One member, Medic Malvin L. Brown, is killed after landing, becoming the first U.S. Forest Service smoke jumper to die in the line of duty. Yet, despite their elite status and critical mission, these men are fighting for a country that still treats them as second-class citizens. When they return to Pendleton, they are not allowed to use the main base facilities. They are segregated, quartered in barracks far from the white soldiers. They are the secret airborne saviors of the Pacific Northwest, yet they remain invisible heroes, fighting an invisible enemy. Late March 1945, the 9th Army Technical Research Institute, Japan. While the 555th trains for a war against fire, the weapon's creators are staring into an abyss of silence. Major General Tsuyoshi Kusaba's team has worked miracles. They have successfully launched over 9,000 balloons. They have calculated the jet stream. They have built an army of paper robots. But from their perspective, every single one has vanished. The total American media blackout, designed to prevent panic, is proving to be a masterful strategic weapon. In the launch compounds, frustration mounts. The soldiers risk their lives handling the volatile hydrogen, working in the freezing pre-dawn hours, only to send their weapons into a void. The High Command demands results, but General Kusaba has none to give. They listen intently to American radio broadcasts, scanning for any hint, any mention of a strange explosion or mysterious fire. There is nothing. The only proof they have is a single dubious report from a propaganda station in China, which claims to have intercepted an American broadcast about great forest fires in the Northwest. The report is vague, unverified, and likely fabricated. It's the only thread they have to hold on to. Then, the war comes for them. American B-29 super fortresses, flying from the Marianas, begin the systematic destruction of industrial Japan. Their targets include the very factories producing the washi paper and, critically, the chemical plants synthesizing the hydrogen. By April 1945, the Fugo program is starving. Its supply lines are being incinerated. Faced with dwindling resources and a total lack of evidence that the weapon is working, the Imperial General Headquarters makes its decision. The operation is a failure. It has not started a single firestorm. It has not caused any panic. It is a waste of precious hydrogen. In April 1945, they shut the program down. The irony is devastating. The Japanese military abandons its intercontinental weapon just weeks before the dry season begins. They give up at the exact moment their weapon is finally about to become effective. And they will never know that they did, in fact, achieve the only enemy-inflicted deaths on the American mainland during the entire war. August 1945, near Otsu, Japan. The war is over. American occupation forces, fanning out across the shattered homeland, begin the work of demilitarization. In the forested hills near Otsu, they stumble upon something baffling: vast, empty concrete basins and the ruins of hydrogen plants. In nearby warehouses, they find silk paper envelopes, complex barometers, and dozens of 33-pound anti-personnel bombs, still in their crates. When they interrogate the captured leaders of the 9th Army Technical Research Institute, the full, astonishing picture is revealed. This wasn't a rogue operation. It was a state-sponsored, 9,300 balloon intercontinental assault. The American intelligence officers are stunned. They had only ever officially logged 285 incidents. They had assumed a few hundred launches, a minor nuisance. Now, looking at the meticulous Japanese logbooks, they are faced with a chilling mathematical void. If 9,300 were launched, and only 300 were ever found, where were the other 9,000? The war was over, but the weapons were still out there. The Fugo balloons, their paper rotted and their hydrogen gone, had fallen silently back to Earth, scattered across the entire western half of the continent. They lay dormant in the deep forests of British Columbia, the mountains of Idaho, the deserts of Nevada, and the tundra of Alaska. And each one carried a live, unstable, explosive payload. For decades, the silent invasion continued as a lingering threat. In 1947, a U.S. Navy demolition team in Alturas, California, accidentally detonated a Fugo, causing a massive explosion. In 1955, a bomb was found in the forests of Washington. In 2014, forestry workers in Lumbee, British Columbia, unearthed another. The echoes of Operation Fugo are still being found today, a deadly scavenger hunt with no map. Back in Oregon, the forest has reclaimed the scar left by the explosion on Gerhardt Mountain, but the event is not forgotten. A memorial now stands in the remote wilderness, a stone monument dedicated to Eliza Mitchell and the 5 children. It reads, "The only place on the American continent where death resulted from enemy action during World War II." It remains a strange, haunting postscript to the largest conflict in human history, a war of paper and wind, a silent, 5,000-mile-long attack that ended not with a bang, but with a whisper. November 3rd, 1944. A desolate beach on the coast of Honshu, Japan. The pre-dawn air is cold, biting at the exposed faces of the soldiers from the Imperial Army's Special Balloon Regiment. They are struggling not with steel, but with a 6-8-foot-tall giant made of paper. The wind whips the vast envelope as the sharp hiss of hydrogen fills the air. This is Operation Fugo, and it is Japan's desperate, secret revenge. 2 years earlier, Jimmy Doolittle's B-25 seconds had shattered the myth of their homeland's invincibility. Japan needed to strike the American mainland, 5,000 miles away. Their solution came from engineer Major General Tsuyoshi Kusaba, who harnessed a force of nature, the high-altitude jet stream, a 150 mph river of wind flowing directly to the Pacific Northwest. His weapon was an intercontinental ballistic missile built from 600 panels of mulberry washi paper glued with edible konnyaku paste. It was a robot. A sophisticated aneroid barometer system dropped sandbags to maintain an altitude of 30,000 feet. After 3 days, when the ballast was gone, its final drop wasn't sand. It was a 33-pound high-explosive anti-personnel bomb and 4 11-pound incendiaries, designed to start a continental firestorm. The first balloon rises silently, vanishing into the darkness. By December, near Kalispell, Montana, a forest ranger finds a crater in the snow filled with paper and twisted metal. A P-38 pilot spots a sphere high over the Pacific. Reports trickle in from Wyoming, Alaska, and Washington. At first, they are unidentified objects, but Japanese markings and unexploded ordnance reveal a chilling pattern. The U.S. 4th Air Force realizes this is a silent, full-scale attack. Their first fear is biological warfare, anthrax, or bubonic plague. Their second, more immediate fear is fire. The balloons are landing in the wet winter, but what happens in June? On the 4th of January 1945, the Office of Censorship in Washington, D.C. makes a critical decision. Director Byron Price issues a memo to all news editors. All mentions of fire balloons are forbidden. The blackout is absolute. The logic is simple. If the Japanese never hear a news report, they will have no idea if their weapon is working. The US will fight this invasion with total suffocating silence. As spring approaches, the American public reads about Iwo Jima, unaware that 30,000 feet above their homes, an enemy armada of 9,000 paper robots is drifting over them, waiting for the weather to turn. May 5th, 1945, near Bly, Oregon. The air smells of pine and damp earth. 26-year-old Eliza Mitchell, pregnant with her first child, steps out of the car. Her husband, Pastor Archie Mitchell, is parking it for their church picnic, joined by 5 children from their Sunday school class: Sherman Shoemaker, Edward Engen, Jay Gifford, and Dick and Joan Patska. While Archie unloads the lunch, Eliza and the children follow a Forest Service road. One of them shouts, They've found something. A large, pale object snagged on a fir tree, with strange metal parts hanging below. As the children gather, Elisa calls out a warning. Archie, back at the car, hears her shout, "Look out! Don't touch that!" Then, the forest erupts. A single, violent explosion flashes through the trees. Archie is thrown to the ground. He scrambles to his feet, shouting his wife's name, and runs into a scene of impossible carnage. The 33-pound anti-personnel bomb, likely jostled, had detonated. Elisa Mitchell and all 5 children are dead. The news shatters the government's wall of silence. The deaths of 6 civilians, the only combat deaths on the U.S. mainland during the war, cannot be hidden. The press blackout is lifted, and on May 31st, news flashes across America. The public is shocked to learn the war has come home. The military, now racing against the dry season, launches Project Firefly. P-38 Lightning and P-61 Black Widow fighters hunt the skies, but the balloons are ghosts. The real defense falls to the 555th Parachute Infantry Battalion, the Triple Nickels. This elite, all-black unit, trained for Europe, is rerouted to Oregon as the world's first smoke jumpers. They jump into 36 missions, fighting fires while simultaneously serving as a bomb disposal squad, all while facing segregation back at their own base. In Japan, the Imperial Army is blind. General Kusaba's team has launched over 9,000 balloons, but the American censorship worked too well. They have no reports. They see no results. As B-29 seconds begin incinerating their hydrogen and paper factories, the High Command concludes the operation is a failure. They shut it down in April 1945, just weeks before the dry season, and the Bly tragedy would have proven their weapons' grim potential. It is only after the war, when American investigators find the launch sites, that the full scale is known. Confronted with the fact that 9,000 were launched, U.S. intelligence is stunned. They had only tracked 300, the rest are still out there. For decades, the Fugo bombs are found in the forests of British Columbia, the mountains of Idaho, and the deserts of Nevada. In a Tokyo office in 1947, General Kusaba is shown the file on the Bly picnic. He sees the names. He reads the report. His 5,000-mile weapon, designed to burn a continent, had instead crossed an ocean, landed in a remote forest, and killed a family on an outing. It was not a military victory, but a surreal, haunting tragedy, the final, absurd echo of a silent paper war.